to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this. Try my best to get through this video in the most informative manner possible without getting too emotional about it, because this is a really important topic to me and I tend to get a little fired up about it. What I'm going to be talking about today is animal testing in the cosmetics and beauty industry. This is a pretty tough subject for me to talk about because I tend to get a little upset about it. I get a bit emotional about it, but I think it's really important to talk about it and spread awareness about it, and hopefully we will see change in our lifetime. Another thing I do want to say is that this is not the only way to be an informed consumer or an ethical consumer. There are a lot of not so great things that happen from, you know, in really any industry, from when you have the raw materials to the final product. There's a lot of unsavory things that happen. Purchasing cruelty-free in the sense that no animals are harmed in the process of creating a cosmetic doesn't necessarily eliminate some of the other maybe not so great things that happen during product production. This is something that's obviously prevalent not just in cosmetics but in most of the products that we buy, including clothing, electronics, you know, personal care products, anything that we purchase. I think it's important to sort of be aware, I guess, just be educated, try to make informed decisions, try your best. I totally get how hard it is. It's difficult to be perfect. It's difficult to really purchase or do anything without causing harm to something or someone at some point down the line. You are already a cruelty-free consumer in the sense of purchasing products that have not been tested on animals. I think that's amazing. I'm excited. I'm super happy that there are other people that sort of share my value in that sense. Not to judge anybody that maybe does not sort of share that as a passion. Maybe they just don't realize. I've actually even had people tell me that it just doesn't really bother them. Like, they're kind of indifferent to the fact that products are tested on animals. So, I mean, it's, for someone that cares a lot about it, it's hard to hear, but our world is obviously so full of issues that you can't carry the weight of every single issue on your shoulders, and I get that. This issue is something that resonates with you. If it is something that hits home and you don't like it and you want to see change, there are a lot of things that we can do as consumers to sort of further the abolition of animal testing in the beauty industry. So that's my intro. Those are my disclaimers. Not wasting too much more time, let's get into the informative part of the video. The product is considered to be cruelty-free when none of its raw ingredients nor the final product have been tested on animals at any stage of the development or production of the product anywhere in the world. Products can be certified as being cruelty-free by PETA, which is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or by the Leaping Bunny program. These are both well-known animal rights organizations that can reliably confirm whether or not a product or its ingredients have been tested on animals. Typically, you will see on a product's package whether or not they are certified as being cruelty-free. So there's a couple ways of sort of determining that right on the package. You either see like the little bunny logo that says cruelty-free at the bottom. There'll be a picture of that in my thumbnail if you're not sure what it looks like. The other one is the Leaping Bunny logo, so it's more of like a full little body of a little white bunny and it kind of looks like it's jumping. Sometimes it will just say right on the package, this product is not tested on animals, cruelty-free, you know, whatever the case may be. So that's the easiest way to tell. If you don't see those logos or if you don't see those claims right on the packaging, it doesn't automatically mean that the product has been tested on animals. I believe it costs quite a large amount of money actually to get those logos printed on their packaging. Possibly the company just hasn't done it yet, or it's not really part of their budget to actually put those logos on. Some of you may be wondering what is so bad about animal testing in the first place, what makes it so horrific, and why is there this huge movement of people that don't want anything to do with it. Lab experiments are usually carried out on very small animals, so things like mice, rats, rabbits, guinea pigs, and sometimes even cats and dogs. So if you guys have a cat or a dog, or you know, some of you might even have rabbits or guinea pigs, these are animals that are pets to us. A lot of people consider them family members, but they are confined in very tiny cages in horrible conditions in huge numbers in these laboratories where animal tests are conducted. Some of these lab experiments involve rubbing chemicals or ingredients into the animal's eyes or their shaved bare skin to determine whether an allergic reaction or some other kind of adverse reaction will occur. These little animals are forced to inhale or ingest some of these chemicals and raw ingredients to determine whether any general ill health effects will occur. Lethal dose tests are conducted where the animal is again forced to inhale or most of the time ingest these chemicals chemicals or raw ingredients to determine something called acute toxicity, which essentially means that the ingredient is toxic enough to actually end the animal's life. About 50% of the animal's death actually occurs. These sick, injured, or otherwise useless animals are then killed, either to be disposed of or to be vivisected or cut open. Killing these animals is usually done by neck breaking, decapitation, or asphyxiation, and pain medications and anesthetics are not generally given to them. These animals are then vivisected, which means that they are then cut open, almost in the sense of an autopsy, to determine what the cause of their death was in relation to the tests and chemicals and ingredients that they were exposed to. That's all the detail that I want to mention when it comes to what's actually involved in these tests. I don't want to go too much more into detail because it's really horrific. There are a lot of limitations, of course, to these animal tests. There are way too many variables for these tests to be predictive of what would occur if a human were to use some of these ingredients or the final product. Sorry to pause, everyone. This part is really important, and I just want to make sure that I get my point across clearly. Animal tests are generally inconclusive due to the fact that from species to species, the tests typically will show variable results. So in other words, if you have a mouse versus a rabbit, they will tend to show the adverse effects of specific ingredients very differently from one another. Further to that, of course, if a mouse and a rabbit show results very different from one another, of course, these are going to show very different results when it comes to human use. Therefore, we can conclude that these tests are generally not going to be conducive to the effects that a human might experience if they were then exposed to these chemicals or ingredients. So in a nutshell, what this means is that these tests, or the results from these tests, are unreliable, they're often inconclusive or completely incorrect, and therefore not at all conducive to what would happen if a human were to use these ingredients or these final products. Which ultimately begs the question, why do these tests exist then? Why do we continue to rely on something that clearly doesn't work? Most of us, or hopefully most of us, can agree that these tests are undeniably cruel. They're outdated. They don't always even work. They don't really give us the answers that we are looking for in terms of determining how safe a product is for a human to use. These tests fall outside of the natural and inherent compassion and empathy that most humans have for animals that can also suffer and feel pain. In North America, animal testing is neither banned nor mandatory. This is especially troubling to me because, to me, what that means is that essentially the brand or the company, it's then up to them to determine whether they will use animal tests in the production of their products or whether they will use ingredients that are known to have been tested on animals at some point. I believe some companies that still use animal testing sort of argue that it's something that's necessary to be innovative, to create new ingredients and new products, but that's not necessarily true either, because new technology and research have created newer, more modern ways of testing the safety of ingredients. These methods are less expensive and actually tend to be more effective and a quicker way of determining how safe ingredients are for human use. There are actually more than 40 new types of tests available that produce very reliable results that can tell us how safe ingredients and products are for human use. These obviously don't require the use of lab animals or any of these cruel, outdated tests. And there are actually over 20,000 already proven safe ingredients that every cosmetics company has available to them. So these companies that want to create innovative, great new products for us to use can, use some of these newer tests that are actually a little bit cheaper for them. Okay, so this is another source of confusion that I get asked a lot more personally when I have this sort of conversation with people, and that is, what's the deal about products that are sold in China and the cruelty-free stance of brands that sell in China but are otherwise cruelty-free here in North America or in other parts of the world? The Chinese government mandates that any imports coming into the country, so any products that are being imported into China from elsewhere in the world, these products must be tested on animals before they are allowed to be sold in the Chinese market. Fun fact, the Chinese cosmetics market hit almost $30 billion. That's billion with a B. The realist in me knows, obviously, that these companies, these makeup brands exist as a business. They exist to make money. company, and a $30 billion market is an absolutely huge market. It's not that surprising. It's obvious, actually, that some of the biggest companies that we know of would expand into a market where that kind of money is involved. So, I mean, it sucks for us as people who want to be or try to be cruelty-free consumers. This issue is what makes the whole cruelty-free stance kind of confusing. I can understand where people are sort of torn about whether these brands are cruelty-free, whether they want to purchase from them, or essentially what these statements on their website mean. So usually if a brand, so say you have a brand in Canada, the United States, or the European Union, it's probably more than likely this brand may not test in Canada, the United States, or the European Union. It's actually banned in the European Union, which I'll talk about later. But say you have a Canadian or an American company. They don't have labs here. They don't test on animals here. They have been known to be cruelty-free for the span of their lifetime as a business until they expanded into the Chinese market. What you'll typically see as a statement on their website under their sort of cruelty-free statement is something to the effect of, we do not test our products or ingredients on animals, and we do not ask others to test on our behalf except where required by law. If you have a brand in Canada or in the United States that tests on animals here in Canada or the United States, it's kind of a different thing than products that do not test in Canada or the United States, but with the sticking point that they are sold in China. I can understand why this would be sort of like an on the fence kind of thing for some consumers. For me, the way I look at it is the bottom line is that this brand made the conscious choice to expand into this market, a $30 billion market. I can completely see from a business perspective why they would do that. It makes sense from a money perspective. But again, as a consumer, I don't have to accept that. The bottom line to me is that this brand made the conscious decision to expand into this market, knowing that their products by law would have to be tested on animals. And oftentimes that goes against their core values as a brand. I'm not going to name drop, but there are brands out there that were known for years, for decades in some cases, to never test on animals. And then when they've expanded into this market, it's like they've turned around and said, okay, well, you know what? It's required by law. It's okay now. And you know what? Power to you, the billionaire owners of these companies. You must live an amazing life, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm the consumer. I'm the one supporting your brand, and I don't have to do that if you're going against your core values as a brand. So further to that, these brands actually pay the government. They fund these tests. The brand themselves, I guess the position of the government is that, okay, you want to sell your product here, we're mandating that if you want to sell here, they have to be tested on animals. This is our way of testing safety. Even though globally it's recognized that these ingredients are safe, these are safe everywhere in the world, but we want these ingredients tested before they're brought into the country, fine. This generates probably a ton of revenue for the Chinese government and allows this brand to sell their product in a $30 billion market. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why this continues to happen. So backing up a little bit, technically if you purchase a product from X brand in Canada, the United States, or the European Union who is cruelty-free here, they do not test on animals here, they use ingredients that are already proven safe, they do not have labs where their products are tested on animals here, technically that product itself that you've purchased here is, I'm not even going to say it's considered cruelty-free, but that product itself will not have been tested on animals. Once again, the bottom line is that the company made the decision to expand into a market where animal testing is mandated, and it's also mandated that they fund those tests. So I don't think that we can consider these brands cruelty-free, but at the same time, I can understand someone's logic in saying, well, I'm still going to purchase from that brand because they don't test here. I live in Canada. This is their policy in this country, and I love this product, and I'm going to keep buying it. Say something positive after I got emotional. I said I wasn't gonna, but I got really passionate about that. A lot of these brands, honestly, I don't think that they are this evil corporation. You know, if you think of the individual people that work for these companies, I'm sure they're not happy about the fact that animal tests exist. Whoever made these brands, they are, you know, they maybe started to be cruelty-free. They have released statements saying that they're against it. So, I mean, I think the silver lining, the positive thing that can come from this whole China debate is that a lot of these companies are doing work in China to abolish animal testing. This is obviously a very well-intentioned, it's a well-meaning step in the right direction, but I mean, ultimately, inevitably, they are still selling products in China, they're still funding animal tests in China, and all that's doing is contributing to this vicious cycle. This is another sort of issue that I see in the cruelty-free community is brands that were previously being sold in China or at some point or another expanded into China and then pulled out and said, wait, never mind, we're not going to sell there. Some people might make the argument that, well, as a company, you made that decision to sell there. At some point, you decided that it was okay with you that your products would be tested on animals and that you were okay with funding them. And I can totally understand that argument, but this is a $30 billion market. I have huge respect for companies that have said, you know what? This doesn't feel right. This is against our core values as a brand. Forget it. We're not going to sell here. See you later. So of course I support those brands. I said I wasn't going to name drop, but Urban Decay is one of them. And I was so upset when Urban Decay announced that they were going to expand there, but we still care about animals. We're never going to test on them here. They expanded and I was like, damn it. Like, why? But then not long after they announced an apology, and I thought, you know what, honestly, for them to be like, you know what, the money, the $30 billion market is not worth it. They have a supporter for life in me, and I'm like pretty hardcore vegan, pretty like strict about all this kind of stuff. I don't like make a lot of exceptions. Not that that's an exception. I still consider Urban Decay cruelty-free, and I think it's awesome that they pulled out, even though a lot of people were really upset about it. So anyway, moving on. Another gray area, another kind of confusing subject with cruelty-free makeup is, what if you have an independent company, smaller company, who's owned by a much larger parent company or conglomerate that is not cruelty-free? So you have a smaller, more independent company, I'll call it, that does not test on animals, they do not sell their products in China, and they do not test here, but they're actually owned by a much larger global company who does sell products in China. Again, the reality here is that most of the companies that you see in Sephora or the drugstore or whatever it is are owned by a handful, not even a handful. There's maybe 3. I said I didn't want to name drop. I will eventually. I'm gonna make videos about my favorite cruelty-free products and my not favorite not cruelty-free brands. I'm not going to name drop. But basically what happens is when you go to Sephora or the drugstore, Walmart, or whatever, most of the brands that you see are going to be owned by maybe, you know, 2 or 3 large cosmetics companies. Try to think of the hugest cosmetics brands that you can. It's more than likely they own all of these companies, you know, at Sephora that we all know and love. The thing with this is that the smaller company who is owned by this larger conglomerate do rightfully still claim cruelty-free status, and oftentimes they're still PETA and Leaping Bunny certified. So I personally think it's still okay to purchase from these brands. Some people still consider these smaller companies to be cruelty-free. Some people will argue that by purchasing from these smaller companies, you are still giving your money to a much larger conglomerate who is still okay with testing on animals. Those still purchasing from the smaller brand will make the argument that we are still voting with our dollar, in the sense that we are purchasing from a cruelty-free smaller company, showing the parent company that consumers want more cruelty-free brands, hopefully influencing this larger parent company to move completely in that direction. When I explain all of this to people, when I talk to people about it, they throw their hands in the air and say, oh my god, that's so much more confusing than I thought. There's so much more red tape than I thought. How do I know that what I'm purchasing is actually cruelty-free? And how do I decide what is actually cruelty-free and who I should be purchasing from? Hopefully I've done justice explaining to you in some sense how all of this works. And ultimately, I think it is up to you as the consumer to decide where you draw the line in terms of what you think is cruelty-free and what is not. Whether you decide that you want to purchase from smaller cruelty-free brands that are owned by a larger parent company that does test on animals, or whether you still want to purchase products that are not tested on animals where you live, but they are in China, that's sort of up to you to decide. There is so much information out there on the internet, and there are arguments for and against both sort of issues. Okay, so then the question of what's the best way to know that the products that I'm purchasing have not been tested on animals. So I touched on this briefly a little earlier. I'll get into a bit more detail about that now. I mentioned the packaging, so you can check the packaging when you're in the store for the Leaping Bunny or cruelty-free bunny logo certification. That's a really quick way of determining. If you don't see those logos on the package, the next thing that I always do is go straight to the company's website. Usually they'll have like a mission statement section, or maybe a frequently asked questions section of their website where it says, do you test on animals? I'm going to read to you a perfect example of what a legitimately cruelty-free brand statement should read. We are a cruelty-free brand and are committed to ending animal testing. We do not test our products on animals, nor do we allow others to test on our behalf. Additionally, we require our suppliers to certify that the raw materials used in the manufacture of our products are not tested on animals. So that type of statement is a pretty safe bet that this is a legitimately cruelty-free company. If their statement says something to the effect of, we do not test our products in animals and we do not ask others to test on our behalf, except where required by law, you can conclude that this brand is not cruelty-free. You're still not really sure, if you're still a little confused by all of this, you can go to PETA's website. They have an amazing cruelty-free shopping guide where you can literally type in any brand you can think of, and it will tell you their cruelty-free stance. There are two other websites that I use all the time to determine whether the products that I want to purchase are cruelty-free or not, and that is Logical Harmony and Cruelty Free Kitty. So these are both very well done blogs. The people that run these blogs go the extra mile in determining whether a product is cruelty-free or not. They'll usually, you'll see emails sometimes of them, actually emailing, corresponding with the company, clarifying what their statements mean. So those websites are really great ones to go on. I'll link those in the description box below. I feel like this video, I really hope it doesn't come off as such a negative rant, because there is a lot of positive progress towards the abolition of animal testing in the world. Animal testing is already banned in all of the European Union, Israel, Norway, and India. The United States, Australia, and New Zealand are all working towards creating legislation that will eventually, hopefully, ban animal testing in those countries. Another fun fact for you, Peter Dinklage, or Tyrion Lannister, the actor that plays Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, does a lot of work with and supports Cruelty-Free International, which is an organization who is obviously helping to implement change in terms of animal testing. So who wouldn't want Tyrion Lannister on their team? Seriously, that's reason enough alone. The last thing I want to say before I close this out, because this video is probably so long already, I get it. I totally get it. It took me, honestly, longer probably than I care to admit to get my makeup collection, or to get at least my purchase habits to be 100% cruelty-free. I know what it's like when you go in Sephora, all the beautiful displays, the new products, the packaging, the new releases, and we're also inundated with the advertising and the beauty community on YouTube. You always see people opening beautiful new packages, and this is a new release, and look at how exciting this is. You go to Sephora and it's like a kid in a candy store. You just want everything. Get how easy it is to put this sort of thing on the back burner. It's the last thing on your mind. You're excited. It's human nature to have that sort of instant gratification, that excitement of what's right there in front. It's easy to forget where these products come from, how they're made, the kind of, I guess, journey you could say, that from raw ingredient to final product. We really are completely disconnected from that process. We don't know what goes on really in these animal labs. Probably the vast majority of us have never actually seen it firsthand. So of course it makes total sense that you're in the store, you're looking at that bomb new highlighter and you just want to buy it. You're not thinking of all this stuff. And when you're not thinking about all of this stuff, which it makes sense, it's it's reasonable that we're not when we're caught up in the excitement in the store. You know, I totally get it. It's happened to me. It's happened to me like pretty recently where I've impulsively bought something without thinking. I'm excited. I'm so excited to get the thing home. And then I do get it home and I realize when the sort of novelty and the excitement wears off, it's like, shit, I bought a product that was tested on an animal, and I'm, you know, my goal is to be an example of somebody that doesn't do that. I mean, it happens. We all make mistakes. We're not perfect. It's not really reasonable to expect perfection in terms of what we purchase. And like I said earlier, this is not the only ethical issue with products. So I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. Personally, for me, I've always found animal suffering and animal cruelty to be one of the most upsetting issues. Always gotten so upset over animal suffering. It's something that I feel really empathetic towards, I guess you could say. So that is sort of my way, I guess, of trying to be a cruelty-free consumer, and I know that I have a lot of shortcomings in other ways. There's a lot of not ethical things about products that we purchase, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I tackle all of those issues because I absolutely don't. You can't be perfect. No one should ever expect you to be perfect, and just because you've decided to try to purchase products that have not been tested on animals doesn't give you license to, you know, take a holier than thou attitude or, you know, judge people that don't. So I mean, I hope this video doesn't come across as me saying that you have to do this or you're not a good person if you don't. It's not at all. I get that everybody kind of has their fight. Everybody has something, everybody has an issue that matters to them. You know, maybe some people are passionate about things that I'm not, and like I think that that's fine and it's okay, it's normal. I just think it's important that we kind of try, that we're informed consumers, and that we question what we're buying and where it came from. I think that's sort of the takeaway message here. So I hope that this video is informative. I hope it maybe opened your eyes a little bit to maybe something that you didn't know about, and I hope that it was useful to you in some way. I'm gonna stop rambling, but thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it all the way till the end. Stay tuned for my next video. Take care.